Have you ever set what seemed like the perfect mole trap only to find it untouched? Or worse, triggered but empty? It happens to the best of us, and more often than not, young moles are the culprit. Today, we're tackling mole offspring, how to recognize their activity, and the best traps and techniques to catch them. So let's get into it. Awareness is half the battle when it comes to trapping young moles. Experienced trappers know what's happening and when, but for those less familiar, mole trapping can go from can't miss to scratching your head almost overnight. And if you wait long enough, the problem seems to fix itself until next season. So here's the timeline. Eastern moles in the US breed in late January into February. In colder northern climates, we don't see this happening because they're deep underground. Warmer climates may see male moles traveling long distances to find a mate. After a 42-day gestation period, litters of 3 to 5 young are born, mainly in late March and early April. By May, they start venturing out, and that's when our phones start ringing. It takes them a little more than 30 days to fully mature, and that's when you're catching them just like an adult. These young moles aren't as strong as adults, so they often travel in softer soil and even above the ground. They can move in small groups, and their feeding patterns are scattered, almost chaotic looking at times. A great example and case study. In May of 2020, a 6-year-old and his mom scooped up 4 young moles with a shovel. That tells you how vulnerable they are at this stage. So, how do you know if you're dealing with young moles? One word: erratic. Their tunnels are all over the place, like they're still figuring things out. Their movements are lighter, less aggressive, and they might push up soil unevenly compared to adults. So there are many traps that don't do a good job catching young moles. This is a Nash choker loop trap. The trigger and catch points are simply too far apart to consistently catch young moles. So one of my favorites is a trap line. It's nearly impossible for young moles to miss the trigger. You might catch them further back than ideal, but you'll still get them. Never clean out the tunnel completely. Adding a little soil actually helps trigger the trap faster. A batang is not a bad option either because you can adjust the trigger closer to the jaws for a better catch. I still prefer a trap line because of the contained trigger, no extra setting tool, and it's just a smaller, more compact trap. The Mole Slayer and traditional Telpex style traps work well too. The key is being extra careful with your sets because your margin for error is smaller with young moles. And remember, mom's tunnels are often used by the kids, so you could still be dealing with adult moles. Here's something to avoid: unnecessary trigger modifications. They can make you overly reliant on hacks instead of mastering solid technique with the trap as designed. Instead, focus on precise placement and proper trigger sensitivity. So when you think about things, keep the trigger level with the top of the tunnel, not way above it or below it. Use a very light trigger setting, pin right on the edge of the trigger hole. Avoid completely clearing out the tunnels. Leave a little dirt inside for a little bit quicker trigger response. So here's a tip with the mole slayer. If you suspect young moles, try to find a straight run and set 2 traps side by side with slightly offset triggers. It's okay to leave a little dirt in the tunnel on both sides, and the offset triggers will create perfect timing for a smaller mole. So something you can't do with a Victor out of sight because the trigger's fixed in the center of the trap. So to wrap it up, know your timing, recognize the signs of young mole activity, and adjust your trapping technique accordingly. With a little more awareness and precision, you'll get back to being the can't miss mole trapper in no time. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe for more trapping tips, and drop a comment if you have any questions. Happy trapping.